Hello and welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going picking apples, not from the tree but from the ones that have fallen on the ground. So this is the apple tree here, a very old apple tree. I made a video of this there about last year and an apple just fell there. Where I just picked the apples up from the ground and we bring them in and we pulp them using a pulper. This one was probably, it's a very old pulper, been on the farm for probably several generations. I don't know how old it is. I think it was like sometime in the 1800s it was made, so it's a really old pulper. So I'm going to pick up any apples that are on the ground. What I have over here, they're scattered everywhere, so I could be here for a bit. But what I have here is a wheelbarrow and a couple of buckets. I want to fill as much apples into the buckets as I can, because I can put the lids on them and that should keep them somewhat fresh, keep any unwanted guests out of them and away from them. And if there's any left, I'll just throw them into the wheelbarrow. Now the reason behind putting them into the buckets is because there is a lot of apples there. I could space them out for a couple of days, because what I'm going to do is obviously pulping them, and then I'm going to give them to a couple of cows. There's cows in two different fields that I'll give them to. The first two cows that calved, and then the last three cows that calved, they're in their own little separate fields there. So I'll give maybe like a half a bucket or whatever to each, depending on how much there is after I pulp them. I also have one full bucket already, which is here. Apples, so, and that's our pulper in there. There's a video already on the channel about a year ago of me using it, so we'll be using it again. But anyways, yeah, fill these buckets, fill these 4 buckets up first, and then the bucket in there, that'll be 5 full buckets. And if there's any left, there might be only a small bit left, we'll put it into the wheelbarrow. We can pulp them and give them to the cows. If I pulp them and put them in the bucket, they mightn't stay fresh for as long as they would when they're in the full apple, if you wish to call it that. If I leave them like what you've seen in the bucket in there, leave them like where they are now, and then pulp them as I want them, if you know what I mean, I think that'll be a way better way of doing it. So we'll just have to go around, pick up the apples, put them into the buckets, and just see how we get on, I guess. Okay, so I've 3 buckets filled, and then the one in the shed there, that's 4 in total. We have to fill one more. So as you can see, they are all full. Keep them fresh, we'll seal the lids, but there's still a bit left, so if I can get my hands on another bucket and lid, might have to do that. The rest then can go into the wheelbarrow. You can kind of see maybe just about the amount of apples that are there. So yeah, we have quite a bit left to go, and 3 buckets already filled, so we'll see how we get on. I might be able to get my hands on one more bucket and one more lid. Buckets are a bit scarce and lids are even scarcer, so, well, there's no scarcity of buckets really. We could get our hands on a couple of buckets here, clean them out, but lids is a different story altogether. Lids are way more scarce. I think we dumped a lot of lids for some reason. I thought keeping a couple of them at hand was handy, but no, we've a load of them dumped. But I'll have a look elsewhere for more lids, and a few more buckets as well, if I can at all. But anyways, we might as well fill this bucket here. We do have the wheelbarrow as well. Imagine if I was just filling the wheelbarrow without the buckets. Imagine the bucket within there and those 3 buckets here within the wheelbarrow. It'd be pretty full, and I don't think it would have cleared up the whatever apples is left on the ground. It'd be a tight squeeze to get them all to fit into the wheelbarrow. So I think the buckets was a smart decision indeed. But yeah, guess we'll fill this last bucket. We'll scope the area, then see what we'll do afterwards, see how many apples are left. But yeah, that one bucket is not going to finish off whatever apples is over there. So yeah. Another bucket filled, and still a lot of apples on the ground. So where's the handle on this? No handle on it, right? I need 2 hands to carry that bucket. Anyways, so that's a total of 5 buckets filled, and still a lot of apples on the ground. If I can get my hands on another 2 or 3 buckets with lids, and we can then squeeze whatever is left into the wheelbarrow, but there's still a lot over there to be thrown into the wheelbarrow. So because if I could leave it as given, because as I mentioned, there's 2 cattle in 2 separate fields, the 2 cows. There's 2 cows that the 2 first cows that calved this year, and now with a cow that's due at Christmas time in one field, and then there's the last 3 cows that calved along with the teaser bull in another field. So I could give half a bucket to each of them, or maybe a full bucket to each, and space it out maybe throughout a couple of days, rather than picking up all the apples, pulping them all and giving them the whole lot. We could nearly space it out to a couple of days within the week, because they've grass as well. Treat it as like we're feeding them meal, but it's only pulped apples. So if I look at it at that perspective, it should be grand. But we need 2 or 3 more buckets for that to happen. So I'll have a quick look around the farm again. Well, I know where there's loads of buckets, but for some reason we just dumped a lot of lids, so we're kind of scarce on lids for buckets, but there might be a handful of lids somewhere. But I'll have a quick look, and yeah, there is a lot of apples there. As I'm recording this video, basically yesterday, throughout the whole day, we just had a big storm, and so whatever apples were basically up high on the tree just fell down onto the ground. And that bucket that was in the shed there, I filled a couple of days ago, probably like last week or something. There was only a scatter full of apples on the ground, and basically whatever was in that bucket there was whatever apples that was on the ground until the big storm came, and now there's just, it's bombarded. The ground is just carpeted with apples. But anyways, yeah, I'll have a look for a couple more buckets and lids. Hopefully I can find some, and we can finish off them picking whatever apples is there. I was lucky. I got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 buckets with the lids to accompany them. Obviously them 2 have proper handles, these 2 have that sort of a handle system, which not too bothered by, because every day from now on, once I start pulping them, there'll be at least 1 or 2 buckets being freed up and available every day once I start pulping and feeding the pulped apples to the cows. So yeah, shouldn't be too bad. Should be plenty of buckets there. 4 should be more than enough, and even if there's a small amount on the ground, it'll go straight into the wheelbarrow and pulped straight away. The buckets with the lids, I wanted to keep them as fresh as possible, and maybe for a couple of days while they're waiting to be pulped, and just to keep any unwanted guests from getting at them. So yeah, anyways, pick up a bucket and let's get back to some apple picking. All picked. I filled, so there's that bucket there, and you can see on the ground that they're more or less all picked. A couple of leaves on the ground. I might have missed maybe a handful of them as well underneath all the grass and the leaves, because there's one there, but it's tidied up. They're better now to be pulped and fed to the cattle than they are just there lying on the ground letting snails or birds eat them. Even though I don't think birds will eat them when they're on the ground anyways. It's more or less the snails. But yeah, I think it's more or less picked up. So we have, including the one that's in the shed that I filled a couple of days ago, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that one, 6.5 buckets. That's not too bad for 6.5. So now the next couple of days is pulping apples, which shouldn't be too bad. They can be pulped and fed to the cattle, either a half a bucket each or a bucket each every day, similar to feeding meal, as I mentioned. So yeah, a nice display of buckets full of apples there, and all I needed was 2, because I brought 4 buckets. I only used 2 buckets and there's 2 left over, which is not too bad at all. So we'll take away these buckets and we can then move the wheelbarrow out of the way and bring them buckets into the shed there near the pulper for pulping. Now that's my workout done. That only took 3 minutes, but because I've probably done it in a time lapse for you, it's considerably less. But yeah, from once I started the recording and ended the recording, it had 3 minutes on the timestamp. So there it is, and that's the full bucket of this, all mulched up. So I'll tip all that stuff back into this bucket. But I'll have to give it a quick wash out first, because when you're picking up the apples from the ground, you're picking up a lot of other stuff as well. So I'll give this a quick squirt with the hose. We'll put the mulched apples in that bucket, and then we'll see how much it fills it. But if that was full of full apples, it should be more or less full when there's some mulched ones in there as well. But if there's not, there's this bucket here. This is the last bucket we filled with when it's only half full, so we could probably put whatever we need of this into the mulcher and mulch it if that doesn't fill the bucket here. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. First we need to clean out that bucket. There we go. It didn't actually fill it, but there's a bit there. What I might do is actually just maybe throw half of this into the pulper and just quickly pulp it up and throw it into this. I'll do all that off camera, and we'll get a properly full bucket of mulched apples. But that's what it looks like. So yeah, I'll do all that, and I'll get back to you then when I finish that. So I gave them about half a bucket there, and it's a bit windy, so you can see there. Anyways, yeah, that's them. We'll cover this up and we'll head to the other field where the other cattle are and give them the last half a bucket. But we'll see. Maybe tomorrow I might give these lot a full bucket and the other lot a full bucket. We'll treat this one as a trial run and see how we get on. We'll either give them a full bucket each, these gang and the other gang, or we'll give them a half bucket each, like what I'm doing now. So we'll see how we get on. There's plenty of apples there really. The other cow down there doesn't seem to be bothered, but yeah, seem to be happy out. Teaser bull, 3 cows, 3 calves, all good. That's their half a bucket of apples, and as you can see the bucket is empty, so there's only 2 cows here. Well, 2 cows. That black one over there is due on Christmas to calf, and those are the 2 first cows that calved, so those are the 2 biggest calves. Get back. So I don't know, there's probably half a bucket for 2 or 3 cows here. It's, well, in the other fields there were 2 cows and the teaser bull were eating the apples here. The 2 cows are. In the other fields there was a cow not anywhere near them, and it's the same situation here. So I don't know. I could give the first cows that I went to maybe a full bucket, and then these a half a bucket. But we'll see how we get on. As I mentioned, yeah, we'll see. We'll either keep at giving these lot and the other lot a half bucket each, or we'll give these lot a half a bucket and the other lot a full bucket. Those are the 2 options really. So we'll see now what I'll do in the next day or so, whether I'll keep at the half a bucket or will I change it up a bit. I don't know yet. Calf is there standing literally on the apples. Right up, don't be standing on them. Don't want to get kicked either. Anyways, yeah, until tomorrow.
And I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. I sit here looking for an answer. Maybe the biggest question was in the last chapter. You gave me the soul I have today. Without you I never could have moved away. But now I see what you teach. I do believe I always should have stayed. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. One day I'll be yours. One day I'll be yours. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life changes just open the door. One thing's certain, I'll always be yours. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you.
And that is that. I don't know how many buckets I filled there, I can't remember, but I filled enough buckets there to do 5 days of pulping. So I was there pulping a full bucket of apples, only filled about 3/4 full of pulped apples. So I had to start to do a full bucket of whole apples, and now with a half a bucket of whole apples to get a full bucket of pulped apples, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and that's our pulper in there, and a very old one indeed it is. I've heard stories of my grandfather using like something like that. It might even been that one, and my grandfather's fathers and grandfathers and all that. So it goes back history, ancestor, just basically ancestors using that, not only for pulping apples but for pulping turnips and beetroot and anything else that you might just pulp to sort of crunch or mulch or whatever you want to call it, pulp it to feed the cows and stuff. So yeah, different breed altogether back then, and different steel as well, different breed and different steel, because it's not the steel you're going to be getting today. That's the right steel you got. And as you can see, Philip, Pierce and Co. Wexford, Hector #1. But it's a very basic, very simple design. You have your handle here, which is connected to, whether or not you're able to see it, this reeler here, which in turn turns, and you can see there's bits of apples stuck to it that's where their little blades are. There's just little bits of iron sticking out with a sharpened edge on them, and when you turn the handle, it turns this big, well, I think it's just a big flat iron with edges on it here and there, and it just pulps the apples, chops them up into very small pieces. But yeah, that's that machine there. Also, the box is getting a bit wear and tear because there's a hole in it, so that didn't last too long. It started disintegrating the last couple of days I was pulping, which is not ideal. And the other thing that's not ideal is the limited room I had for pulping and for filling the buckets, which is also not ideal. This whole shed needs to just have one big clear out and just dump whatever needs dumping and keep whatever needs keeping. And there's just history of agricultural implements in this area here. You can see a mowbar there, there's 2 plows within there, you don't know what you'd find. It's just history in there, but even though I had enough buckets to pulp for 5 days, and I've been pulping for 5 days, giving it to the cattle down below there and the cattle at the back of the house. Usually I rolled the apple tree, which is just out there, usually around the month of October. It does start to grow apples between, you know, maybe like August, September, and they're really, you can really sort of see them by the month of October, but then they're just falling onto the ground, which is what you've seen me do, picking up the apples that fell on the ground. But yeah, it is a very old apple tree. That's it there. Not many apples on it now because we're in late October, very late October. But yeah, that's the old apple tree. You could really see the apples on the tree throughout the month of October, and between it, they're just falling off the tree, birds picking them off the tree and them falling on the ground. And once the apples fall on the ground, the birds won't go near them. Once they're up on the trees, they might pick at them and eat whatever they can until they fall on the ground, and then they just leave them there. And if you don't go at them and pick them up, they'll either rot on the ground or the snails will go at them. So we do every year basically go around, fill buckets, bags, wheelbarrows, whatever we can get our hands on, and just basically fill it and just do a couple of days of pulping and feeding to the cattle. Back in the day now, when this apple tree was sort of young, it's an old apple tree now, it used to produce some nice big juicy sweet apples, but now they're not. They're still, if you could get a good apple from the actual tree and pick it down, and you can even bite it, you probably want to wash it first or whatever you like to do, but you can still eat them. They're just not as big as they once were. But they still should be somewhat sweet and juicy. But now we just give them to the cows because they fall on the ground, and that gives the cattle a bit of a treat, eating some apples as well, which is not too bad. But also I pulped the last bucket there, and then I went out back, basically with the route I took just there, to see was there any more apples on the ground, because this time of the year it starts to slow down. The last bit of apples will be on the ground, and there was. So this could be the somewhat last bucket full of apples for this year. There's still a nod scattered bit of apples on the tree, which probably will fall and could accumulate to that bucket being full of whole apples. But as you see now, there isn't a whole lot of room, and there isn't a whole lot of apples out there anymore this time of year. But yeah, I know there's pulpers out there now, sort of big ones for the big farmers who do feed their cattle pulped beetroot or apples or any other sort of root crops or anything like that. They do have just a big massive pulper. They use a front loader machine or a wheel loader or whatever, and scoop them up into the bucket and tip it in to the pulper, because that's how big these ones are. And you basically connect it to your PTO shaft and connect it to the tractor, and the PTO shaft on the tractor is basically what turns the pulper, instead of manpower and a handle. So yeah, that's that. I have seen videos online of people converting that type of pulper, taking the handle off and doing a bit of fabricating and manufacturing so that you can put a PTO shaft on it and connect it to a tractor. But for that size pulper, I don't think it's really, you know, it's not a big deal whether or not it's on a horsepower or manpower. Obviously when you see this me pulping, it's time lapsed, it's sped up, but in real time, basically to pulp a full bucket and a half of whole apples only took me 3 or 4 minutes to pulp that and fill it into the bucket and whatnot. But yeah, it didn't take too long at all. It doesn't take too long. But it's a good week basically of free gym membership operating, something like that. But yeah, just imagine 100 years ago you would have spent hours pulping stuff with something like that. So, and as I did mention, a different breed back then when they were ploughing with, when there was no machines, it was horses. So yeah, and they've tipped the trough over. Oh yes. But anyways, so you've seen there that I was the first day that I was pulping and giving the apples, I basically went out to the field with them cattle out there. Cattle at the above the house, I just dumped it on the ground and they scoffed it up. With these, I dumped it on the ground for them the first day and they scoffed it up, but then we basically have a little runway here with a trough, so we said we might as well use it, no point putting it on the ground when we have a trough here at hand. And so we did. Now the cattle up at the back of the house, I was only giving them half a bucket of mulched apples, and you may or may not have remembered I did mention whether or not I should be giving half a bucket each, half bucket to them and a half a bucket to the other ones, or a full bucket to them and a full bucket to the other ones. I kept it with half a bucket each, so a half a bucket to them and a half a bucket to the ones above. We kept it at that. I was giving these guys basically a quarter full of meal as well, mixed with the pulped apples, and that was basically to sweeten the deal, if you wish, just to coax them in, because eventually this is how we're going to have to bring them into the shed. When they're down that field, we'll get our bucket of meal or whatever, and we'll probably a man with the bucket of meal and maybe a man or two with sticks behind them, and we'll guide them into the little pen here. We'll close that gate there, and these two gates sort of open up. You can see there's a little square latch here that gate secures into, and then there's a circle latch for this one on that gate that this secures into. So this gate latches into that gate and that gate latches into this gate, and just makes a little runway, so when they come out of the pen they can come up here. That door would obviously be closed and they'd go down the little crush there into the pens and back into the shallot house just down below there. So when we do want to bring them in, it should be fairly easy because they're now used to getting meal. But I'd say, well, we're getting apples as well, basically just to use up the apples that were on the ground and not let them go to waste. But once the apples are all gone, there'll be one more day with the bucket I showed you earlier. But once that bucket is gone, they won't be getting apples and meal. They'll probably just be getting a small bit of meal, and they'll be used to getting meal then, and once they see a man coming with a bucket, they'll be following you up, they'll be running up the field. It'll save us from going down chasing them because they're used to getting meal. And we usually do this often enough when we have cattle out in the fields, any field, and we want to get them into when we want to bring them inside, basically maybe a week or two before we plan on bringing them in, we'll give them meal. And you know, basically what we've done with the bullocks there before we sold them, but when we were giving them to the bullocks, we were also giving them the meal to sort of fatten them up, give them a bit more weight for the mart, and to entice them as well, because we would have been able then to entice them into the little pen, load them up on the cattle trailer, bring them home, put whatever stickers or lot numbers we needed to put on them, and then bring them into the mart. They were well used of a man and a bucket of meal, so we didn't have to be going down the field chasing them with cattle sticks or quads or tractors or vehicles of any sort. They seen the man and the bucket and they were running up towards you. But going to be the same situation them down there. We'll be bringing them in now in the next week or so, so they should be able to, This should follow a man in a bucket easily enough. But yeah, so I had enough buckets fills there for 5 days of pulping and 5 days of apple feeding, and I have one more left there that I picked and filled today. But basically for this video, that is going to be it. And that's basically what we do every year. Around the month of October, we do pick apples, put them into either bags or buckets, or fill it into a wheelbarrow, depending how much is there. Some years we could have a lot of apples. I think this year would qualify as a lot of apples, and I think that could be due to maybe the more milder weather we got. Even though it wasn't really sunny, it was wet at times, but the temperature itself was mild. You know, temperature wise we had a fairly good summer. Weather wise, not too well, but it is what it is. We had I think last year we got a wheelbarrow and we just filled the wheelbarrow, and that's as much apples that was in it that time last year. But what did I have there? I had about 5 or 6 buckets full of apples. I think that's a bit more than filling them up in a wheelbarrow. So this year we had a nice yield of apples. But anyways, we'll have to wait and see what next year's yield of apples is going to be like. But anyways, that is going to be the end of today's video. You've seen the hard work we do put through every October pulping apples. But anyways, yeah, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my merch. The link to that will be down in the description as always. And I'll see you in my next video very soon. Take care.